Here are the headlines for the day. A chaotic and violent scene unfolded at the Capitol this morning as supporters of President Trump swarmed the building to protest the Electoral College vote. Now, this is still happening right now and has forced a lockdown and various confrontations with police. Vice President Pence and Senator Chuck Grassley were escorted from the Senate chamber after rioters overpowered police and broke into the Capitol in an attempt to stop the joint session of Congress convened to certify President-elect Joe Biden's win. The House and Senate were less than an hour into debating the first GOP objection to a state that Biden won when they were forced to abruptly recess and mostly maskless people crowded into the hallways around each chamber. Right now, I want to bring in the executive director of the UCLA Black Policy Project, Isacc Bryan. He's going to help break down today's events. First, welcome back to the Black Report, Isacc. We're glad to have you.
Oh, always good to be back with family.
Absolutely. All right, give us your initial thoughts. I know you have a lot of them. My
initial thoughts is this is almost unbelievable. It's certainly discouraging. It's heartbreaking, but it's not completely unexpected given the flames of bigotry, hatred, and misinformation that have been spreading for at least the last 4 years.
Yeah, I agree with that. Now, Isaac, excuse me, how much of the problem do you think Trump and his supporters will be to the Biden administration and democracy as we see it?
I think it's an incredible problem right now, but I think all of that is set to end. And today, we've got mixed emotions, right? Because the Senate is now Democrat. Shout out to Stacey Abrams and all the organizers on the ground in Georgia, right? We've taken the White House back. We've taken the Senate back. We hold the House. And so now is the time to legislatively eradicate the bigotry that has fueled moments like today. So today is not just a day of disgust and heartbreak, but it's a day of triumph and optimism. And I don't think that the current administration on their way out and hereafter are going to have too much of an impact on stopping us from moving forward if that's really where we want to go.
Thank you so much for joining us. Now, I want to know from a historical perspective, can you talk about law enforcement's handling of Black protests in comparison to what we've seen on TV today?
Absolutely. What we're seeing today is apathy, appeasement. They moved the gates. They let folks through. I mean, countless of us saw videos of them, law enforcement officers, taking pictures with the same mob that was breaking into some of our most historic sites. And I can tell you firsthand, right after George Floyd was murdered, Breonna Taylor was murdered, Rayshard Brooks was murdered, and countless others back in 2020, we took to the streets and I was personally hit with batons. My partner was thrown to the ground. I've seen people shot with rubber bullets. Thousands were arrested, right? Spent nights in jail for exercising their civic duty peacefully. And that's not what we're seeing today. What we're seeing today is an allowance of this kind of hostility. And this mob, it's not a protest, right? This is domestic terrorism. This is white supremacy. This is white rage. And those just aren't flowery terms. Those are academic terms. And those are the most accurate ways to describe what's happening. This is a protection of white supremacy that we're seeing right now. But hopefully it's the last stand for an ideology that should be dying out now that we have the legislative power to move things forward in this country.
Isaac, you're absolutely right in regards to the fact that words like addressing this as what it is. This was a mob. This was a riot. This was not protesting. This wasn't peaceful in any way, shape, or form. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'm curious to know your thoughts on what the world is thinking when they're seeing all of this unfold. What the world and world leaders are thinking when they see this.
I think the world is saying America needs to get their shit together, right? But I think a lot of that is going to subside on the 20th when we inaugurate a new president. I mean, we saw the video from the current administration basically failing to condemn what's going on, right? Ivanka Trump calling folks that were out today patriots. The president, 45, still claiming a fraudulent election despite overwhelming certifications across states, including many Republican states with Republican legislators, with gerrymandered districts and Republican leadership, still going for Joe Biden because that's the way the people voted. This election was historic. It wasn't fraudulent. And so the fact that those claims are still being perpetrated from the Rose Garden and the White House lawn are disgusting. But I think in a few days, we won't have to deal with that anymore. And the rest of the world knows that. Despite what we're seeing today, we still have one of the most advanced democracies and republics in the world. We still have a model for how to elect leadership. This is not an example of a good transition of power but it's going to be a transition of power nonetheless, because there's nothing that the current administration in place can do to maintain this power. The people have voted otherwise, and we're going to head that direction.
I saw a Republican senator this morning saying that he was ashamed of all of this because China leaders are probably laughing at us. What do you think about Donald Trump's response to this? You touched on it a little bit. You know, he posted that video asking these people to go home while also telling them he loved them. Realistically, what should he be doing? Is this the most that we can even expect?
We would wish for decorum, right? And respect and leadership. But that's not what we're going to get. What he should be doing is telling folks to go home, telling folks to remain peaceful, telling folks that a transition of power is what this country was built on, and that he lost an election. And that if they really wanted to have their ideologies and their perspectives represented in our policy making, that they would have to organize better and move folks into office in the way that Georgia just did. If you want to be heard in this democracy, it's not by violating the sanctity of some of our most historic landmarks and civic institutions. It's by getting off your ass, organizing your communities, getting out and speaking. And I'm grateful that we're going to hear from Gary Chambers later, because that's a brother who's doing that in his own jurisdiction. But we got to get out and get organized. But the president doesn't want to do the hard work. 45 doesn't want to do the hard work. And that's why he was a one-term president. And that's why the people were able to rise up and speak in this moment. And so he's not going to lead us out of this. But we also have to recognize that this isn't as big of a deal as we're seeing today, right? We saw pictures from March for Our Lives, right? And the women's protests outside in D.C., huge, hundreds of thousands of crowds that have marched on D.C. And that wasn't today. Those pictures were fraudulently taken from past events and pushed out as propaganda for the size of today's unraveling. And there's really not that many folks that were speaking today. They were just speaking with the hostility that we're not accustomed to and that we don't need on our Capitol steps, for sure.
Isaac, I got to say, you said something earlier in the interview that really stood out. The fact that with all this chaos going on today, you said we have so many positive things to look forward to. So I applaud you for saying that. We're hearing that Nancy Pelosi said they're going back in to finish what they started today. So is it safe to say that what happened today will not affect the election certification process?
Oh, not at all. Not a chance. You can't touch that process, right? It's a done deal. The people have spoken. The people spoke clearly. The electors have spoken, and it's time to move forward. What we need to do is make sure we protect Kamala Harris, right? We need to protect our leadership that are in place. I mean, there are folks that are in the line of secession that were in there today. This was dangerous. This wasn't protesting. This was domestic terrorism. Call it what it was, right? And we can do better, but this process is going to move forward with or without the folks who were at the Capitol today.
Now, speaking of riots and terrorism, that leads me into my next question. I want to know, Trump only has 2 weeks left. Do you think America should be concerned or scared right now?
I would never encourage folks to be scared, but we should have been concerned at least the last 4 years. We should have been concerned every single day. So I'm not going to stop being concerned until that man's out of the White House. And after that, I'll be less concerned, but I still have, let's not forget, Democrats have been in leadership before, and there's a need for accountability as well. So just a change of party and moving from the greatest bigot in American history and a white nationalist in the White House to Joe Biden doesn't mean everything is peaches and cream, right? We've got to hold folks accountable. We've got to move things forward. So we might not have, domestic terrorism on the steps of the White House Capitol, but we still might have some hostile policies if we're not holding everybody accountable that we put into office.
That is so true. And we got to get ready for 2022. We cannot stop the work we put in this election to make things happen. Isaac, my man, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it, man. And we look forward to talking to you soon, all right?
Absolutely. Thanks,
Always
Isaac.
good to be with y'all.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's talk about Georgia, you all. Democrat Rafael Warnock is now the projected winner of one of Georgia's 2 Senate runoffs. This win makes him the first black senator in Georgia's history. Warnock is a pastor who spent the past 15 years leading the Atlanta church where Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. preached. He beat Republican incumbent Kelly Loeffler, and in an emotional address early Wednesday, he vowed to work for all Georgians, whether they voted for him or not. He cited his personal experience with the American dream. Listen to him talk about his parents, because I think it's powerful.
A son of my late father, who was a pastor, a veteran, and a small businessman, and my mother, who as a teenager growing up in Waycross, Georgia, used to pick somebody else's cotton. But the other day, because this is America, The 82-year-old hands that used to pick somebody else's cotton went to the polls and picked her youngest son to be a United States Senator.
Warnock's victory is a symbol of a striking shift in Georgia's politics as the swelling number of diverse, college-educated voters flex their power in the heart of the Deep South. It follows Biden's victory in November when he became the first Democratic presidential candidate to carry the state since 1992. Meanwhile, more news. Democrat candidate Jon Ossoff was just declared the winner of his Senate race against incumbent Senator David Perdue. After the announcement, Ossoff said, "It is with humility that I thank the people of Georgia for electing me to serve you in the United States Senate." Ossoff is the first Jewish senator from Georgia, and he will also be the youngest sitting U.S. senator at 33 years old. David Perdue has not conceded the race. But here's the thing. Once these results from Georgia are officially certified, the Senate will be evenly divided between Democrats and Republicans. But of course, once Kamala Harris is sworn in as vice president, she will have the power to break ties for Democrats.
Politico is reporting Joe Biden has selected Judge Merrick Garland to serve as his attorney general, according to two people with knowledge of the decision. Biden selected Garland over former Senator Doug Jones and former Deputy Attorney General Sally Yates, choosing to elevate the Chief Judge of the United States Court of Appeals in D.C. to run the Justice Department. In 2016, President Barack Obama nominated Garland to serve on the Supreme Court, but his nomination languished in the GOP-controlled Senate at the end of the former president's term. In recent weeks, Garland has been recusing himself from cases involving the federal government, fueling speculation that he was a leading candidate for the job.
Nearly 1 year after 26-year-old nurse Breonna Taylor was fatally shot in her apartment, 2 more officers have been fired from the Louisville Police Department. Former detectives Miles Cosgrove, the police officer who shot and killed Breonna Taylor, as well as Joshua James, who obtained the search warrant, both were fired today in connection with Taylor's wrongful death. They joined Brett Hankinson, who was fired in June for blindly firing 10 rounds into Taylor's apartment. According to a copy of his termination letter obtained by the Courier-Journal, Cosgrove failed to properly identify a target when he fired 16 rounds into Taylor's apartment. While James, on the other hand, he violated department policy for truthfulness and search warrant preparation. This is all according to the letter from Interim Chief Yvette Gentry, who took over as the city's first black female police chief earlier this year, as we talked about at the end of last year. Actually, I forgot we're into 2021 now. Emails sent to the department from Cosgrove and James were obtained by local news outlets.
Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says $2,000 stimulus checks will be one of the first orders of business once Democrats take control of the chamber on January 20th. Here's exactly what he told reporters during his first press conference after the polls closed last night in Georgia. He said, "One of the first things I want to do is deliver the $2,000 checks to the American families." Once again, we mentioned it earlier today, these elections mean Democrats will regain control of the Senate for the first time since 2014. And, Schumer has already declared himself the new Senate Majority Leader. Dems say it sounds nice.
3 candidates have announced they will be running for Louisiana's 2nd congressional district seat. So far, Gary Chambers, a social justice activist based in Baton Rouge, has qualified along with former Louisiana Democratic Party leader Karen Carter Peterson and State Senator Troy Carter. Congressman Cedric Richmond is vacating the position this month to join the Joe Biden administration as a senior aide in the White House. If you recall, Gary Chambers Jr. went viral last year for this.
Intended to get up here and talk about how racist Robert E. Lee was, but I'm going to talk about you, Connie. Sitting over there shopping while we talking about Robert E. Lee. This is a picture of you shopping while we talking about racism and history in this country. Only white members of this board got up while we were up here talking too, because you don't give a damn, and it's clear. But I'm going to tell you what the slaves, my ancestors, said about Robert E. Lee, since you don't know history, sister. Let me tell you that they said when he got the plantation, after he got off the field where 27,000 people died, at Gettysburg, Connie, Robert E. Lee was a brutal slave master. Not only did when he whooped the slaves, he said, lay it on them hard. After he said, lay it on them hard, he said, put Bryan on them so it'll burn them. That's what Robert E. Lee did. And you set your arrogant self in here and sit on there shopping while the pain and the hurt of the people of this community is on display, because you don't give a damn and you should resign. You should have resigned 2 years ago when you choked a white man in his house. You should have resigned 2 weeks ago when you got on TV and said foolishness. And you should walk out of here and resign and never come back, because you are the example of racism in this community. You are horrible. Now to the rest of the board. You have an obligation to the people of this community, and 81% of them are black. And do you need a Klan rally outside, Mr. Godet, before you end it? Because holding it up means that you put that building in jeopardy. You do, sir. Because all over the country, they burning stuff down. And black folks in this city have stood with protesters. I ain't seen you elected officials out there with them, making sure that nothing goes south in Baton Rouge. It's been folks in this community who give a damn. Not just when it's comfortable, but every time. And 4 years ago, we came down here. Mr. Drake, they say you're a good man. Be a good man. Black folks say you're a good man. White folks say you're a good man. Your legacy is attached to tonight, brother. Your legacy.
Well, I don't know about Connie, but I know my face hurt watching that video. I don't know about you guys. Joining us now to discuss his bid for Congress in the state of Louisiana is the Gary Chambers Jr. Welcome to the Black Report, Gary.
Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
There he is.
Yes. Okay.
So
Standing
nice to have you
ovation, sir.
Can we?
That was.
Listen, you got Connie together.
we gotta do it, man.
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
And yes. God, we all wish that we could have been there to cheer you on in person. That was one of the most powerful viral videos out last year. For our soulmates that might have missed it, what's the status of the name change for the school, and how's Connie?
So the status of the name change is we were successful that night in winning to get the name change. So the school is now Liberty High School. And Connie's still sitting on the school board, y'all.
She is, huh?
Oh,
But
wow. Well,
she
congratulations on being successful with the name change. And, you know, I don't know. Have you and Connie become friends? No?
You know, Connie and I had a decent relationship prior to her and I having that moment. But, you know, I confront politicians, black, white, male, female, anybody can get it, because I'm here for the people, not the politics, as one of our state representatives here says.
Amen. Amen. That's all we can ask for. Before we get into your bid for Congress, what are your thoughts on what is happening on Capitol Hill currently?
I think what we saw today is an example of why people like me have to run for Congress. You have a government that is out of control because we've allowed Republicans, and we've gone down there playing nice with Republicans when those people mean war with us. They mean a war of resources, and to the point where they will storm the Capitol. If they were black, they'd have been shot dead at the doors of the Capitol, and that's what we all know. And people need to say it from the halls of Congress, and there needs to be accountability for the people who went in there. They walked them out the building tonight when they should have been arrested tonight and charged with domestic terrorism.
It is such an honor to have you on our show today. Tell us a little bit about your campaign platform. What are the pressing issues that you want to address for the state of Louisiana and the nation at large?
So for me, you know, my slogan is do good and seek justice, which is scripture, Isaiah 1:17, do good, seek justice, help the widow, the orphan, and the poor. And for me, I want to live that out in the type of legislation that we bring. I believe that this global pandemic that we've experienced shows the need for Medicare for all and access to health care for every American citizen. That should be a right, not something that is negotiated based on whether you have a good job or not, right? And we take profits out of giving health care to people. Thousands, hundreds of thousands of people have died at this point, and we can't allow our government to continue to move on as if this isn't an issue. I think we've also got to look at racial and social justice, because today shows us that there are deep inequities that exist within policing in America. Listen, I live in a parish that has 11 different police agencies in the most incarcerated state in America. We are ranked number 50 in the nation, 50 in crime and 49 in opportunity. So telling me that more funding to police, especially when police officers will walk white criminals out the door and they'll slam black folks down for the same actions, we got to think about reimagining policing in America. And that starts at the federal level with the funding and resources that they send, as well as the accountability that exists for police officers when they harm us. I think we've also got to be talking about our environment and the future of jobs for our communities and the Green New Deal. For me, I live in a state that is deeply entrenched in oil and gas, and it supplies thousands of jobs for the people of this state. But what happens when oil and gas dies to Louisiana's economy if we're married to it? We will bottom out with it. And so I'm looking to find out, how do we go about bringing in that type of technology to our state, expanding the job market, creating opportunities for people in divested communities, and fighting for people in every corner of this country when the people of Louisiana's 2nd Congressional District send me to Washington.
Gary, let me tell you something. If I was one of your constituents, you would have my vote without question. I wanted to continue on with what you were just talking about, oil and gas. Talk to us a little bit about your vision for the Green New Deal.
For me, I think it's a real opportunity for us to talk about job creation, right? If we look at these plants and these refineries that existed for the last 100 years, they've supplied thousands of jobs. And so while so many people speak about the harmful impact, I recognize the economic impact that it's had for communities. But we've got to say, if we recognize that these jobs will eventually go away, we can't be a state that's the last to jump on the bandwagon and go out and get those new green jobs. And so what I'm thinking about is children that are in elementary school, what are the jobs going to be that they are able to retire from? Where are they going to be able to work for 20 and 30 years and make a livable wage, a good wage to be able to provide for their families? Because we rank number 50 in crime, because we rank number 49 in opportunity. Mm-hmm. And I see the Green New Deal as an opportunity builder for jobs in the state of Louisiana and other southern states if people wake up.
Gary Chambers Jr., the man with the plan. Absolutely. I'm telling you right now, love what we're hearing so far. Let's switch it up just a little bit. Louisiana has several HBCUs in that state. If you are elected to Congress, do you have plans to help provide more federal support to the institutions?
Absolutely. I live in Baton Rouge, and Southern University is right here in Baton Rouge. Yeah. My mother is a graduate of Southern University, and as well as Dillard is in our district, and Xavier University in New Orleans. And so I'm going to fight to ensure that HBCUs are protected, that funding is expanded, and that we look at offering an expansion of programs for HBCUs. When we begin to talk about our plan in detail, we're going to talk about how we've got to maybe even expand medical schools at some of these places, law schools at some of these places. Southern has the Southern University Law Center, and Louisiana has more Black judges than nearly any state in America, right? That's because of SULC. And if we're going to be serious about the future for African Americans in this country, we've got to create the educational opportunities for them right here in Louisiana so that they can grow, thrive, and flourish.
Wonderful. Now, speaking about the South, still staying on that topic, you talk a lot about the new Black South. Can you tell our soulmates watching right now what you mean by that?
Georgia on my mind. I am so happy with what Georgia voters have done today. Yesterday, because it has shown us the potential of southern states to be major players in federal politics, right? But we currently only have, now we're going to have 3 Black U.S. senators, with Senator Warnock going to Washington. But Black folks make up 14% of the population of this state. There are 40-something million Black people in this country, and 55% of them live in the Deep South. If we want to be serious about how do we grow our political power, our economic power as Black folks, we've got to control the tax system of some of these state governments. Because when we look at the Breonna Taylor case, who was it that held it up? It was a Black man that was the Attorney General. We need more progressive-minded Black folks elected to statewide office, and there are not enough of them elected in the Deep South. And that's in large part because they recognize our potential to take over the power structure of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North and South Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas. If we are serious about organizing and following in the steps of Leader Abrams, we're going to be able to make wholesale change for our communities and build a future that is a new Black South. And I believe that it is possible. And talking about a new Black South doesn't mean we're evicting white people. We're just saying that we're giving Black people the opportunity to build full political power and see our own ideology worked out through the government that we have funded for so many decades.
Gary, I just want to go back to the school's name change just for a second there, because can you talk to me a little bit about the power that we hold, in changing that name? Little boys and girls shouldn't have to go to schools honoring people who would have wanted them dead had those people still been alive. And what does that mean for the community? Because, you played a big part in that change. How you behaved at that meeting and causing this all to go viral. That puts pressure on the board and members of the board who were openly supporting keeping the name before that. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? And before you go, just tell us how we can keep up with your campaign as well.
Well, I'll tell you, you can go to chambersforcongress.com to support the campaign. We've had over 5,000 people contribute so far, which is, I'm sure, the most contributions of anybody running in this race currently. And so I'm excited about that. But the power in changing the name to Liberty High School is that young Black boys and girls don't have to go to a school, like you said, that is named after a bigot. They don't have to go into a building where the minute they say the name that their humanity is devalued. And what is important about this is it's erasing the brutal attempt to intimidate us. Because it's not like they named this school right up in the 1800s after Robert E. Lee died. They named this school in the 1960s or the 1950s when the civil rights movement was going on in order to intimidate Black people who were fighting for access or equity in public education. And this was a method to intimidate us. And so we have robbed them of the ability to intimidate Black children or devalue their humanity by honoring a bigot.
That's powerful.
That's so powerful.
Future Congressman Gary Chambers Jr., thank you so much for joining us here at the Black Report. You are welcome back anytime, and trust and believe we are going to be keeping up with your campaign.
Absolutely.
Thank y'all so much. I appreciate you.
The YouTube soulmates are on fire about Gary right now. I just want to let you guys know. So Oliver says there need to be more people with the courage and fortitude like yourself and Stacey Abrams. So hopefully he can still hear us. That was a great comment. Another person said, Danny says, yes, as Black people, we need an economic base, and that includes owning businesses. Just one more quickly about Gary. Salute Gary for your righteous rant, and everything you said was on point. Another person says, great representation of freedom and justice. I mean, Gary was just a big hit, so we're just so happy to have him. And if you guys have any more comments, please keep on commenting. I'll make sure I get you a shout out throughout the show.